President-elect Trump picked up remarkable support from white working-class Americans. You've heard a lot about that on his way to the White House. During his thank you tour, he'll visit many of the same communities that supported him. How big was his win in that demographic? Joining us now is political analyst David Paul Kuhn, one of the experts on demographics, I think, in covering American politics. It's great to see you.
Thanks for having me.
So how big and how unprecedented was his win among this newly famous demographic, working-class white voters?
So Donald Trump did better with working-class whites than any Republican since Ronald Reagan in 1984, which is stunning, first of all.
Yeah.
Because, of course, Reagan was an incumbent, and he had the political winds at his back and was very popular. Hillary Clinton also did worse with working-class whites than any Democrat or Republican since the Second World War. On top of all of that, Trump did best with blue-collar white men than any Republican or Democrat since the Second World War. So what does that all mean? He had a historic mandate from the white working class, from the very voters he spoke to tonight and the very voters who made his presidency.
It sure seems that way. So the question is why? Here's my theory, and you've been studying it more than I have, but my theory is twofold. One, he doesn't hate them, unlike the left, which actually kind of hates these voters, doesn't care about them. And two, he's abandoned the stumbling block they had to join the Republican Party, which was their economic program. They didn't like the Republican economic program, actually, and Republican leaders didn't know that. That's my theory. Absolutely.
I mean, first of all, the party of hypercapitalism, the traditional Republican Party, didn't notice that the majority of their voters were victims of capitalism.
Exactly.
Number one. Number two, listen, he came out to Lee Greenwood tonight.
Yeah.
Right? So first of all, that speaks to the symbolism of the office, and that speaks directly to them. So the presidency is as much about the symbolism as it is policy. I think we forget that first part. And when he shows the pride, when he starts speaking with pride, when he starts alluding to these sort of icons of middle America, like coming out to Lee Greenwood, very Reagan-esque, I think that speaks to something far deeper than policy, which obviously, I think that, well, not obviously, but I think the 2016 election reminded the punditocracy that presidencies are made in the gut, not the head.
Yes.
And I think Trump also speaks to their gut directly.
Well, of course he does. He's a genius at that. But he's also making, I think, a deeper pitch, which is against the hyper-capitalism that you just mentioned. Now, he's obviously not against capitalism. He's a great beneficiary of capitalism and a promoter of it. But the idea that we're helpless before economic change, there's nothing we can do, which is basically Obama's position, Hillary's position. I'm sorry, it's over for you. Boo-hoo, we're going to retrain you or whatever. He doesn't buy that.
Yeah, so let's take the carrier news. Right? That anecdote is exactly what Barack Obama didn't do in 2009. Now, obviously, this is symbolic, except for those 1,000 jobs.
Right,
but on a national level, it's symbolic. But what's important about that is he went beyond the market forces. He went beyond the norms, and he said, I'm going to use what power I have in the bully pulpit to come to save those jobs. And I'll tell you, if he hadn't done that and all those jobs went to Mexico, he would have been destroyed in the press today. So that he did that, and obviously we'll see if it's a harbinger of what he'll do as president, I think speaks to exactly what populists on the left and right wanted to see from Barack Obama during the Great Recession. They wanted to see a president who said, regulations be damned, norms be damned. I'm going to make the Great Recession, the economy, the blue-collar crisis, most of the job losses were among the blue-collar, more blue-collar America. I'm going to make that my alpha and my omega. That's what my presidency will be about in the first term. That's what FDR did.
Which would have been a traditional Democratic tradition.
Which would have meant Donald Trump wouldn't have won the presidency in this election. But, of course, Barack Obama didn't do that. And
why? Because they're beholden to the market fundamentalists in the tech world, among others, who don't believe in that at all.
I also think because, which you alluded to, they see the white working class, the very people who were most traumatized by the Great Recession, as an opposition to sort of the next America. And I will also say that there was tension. There were emails in back rooms about, you know, we don't want to give jobs to burly men during the 2009.
Because they hate them. And by the way, if people think you hate them, they don't like it. That's what I've learned.
Or even if you just leave them out.
Right.
Hillary Clinton didn't speak of the white working class in hateful terms. She just left them out of the conversation.
Well, she called them privileged, by the way.
That's true. She's deplorable.
So there was this amazing exchange today, and I don't even think it's been on television yet, at the Kennedy School, which does these recaps of the election, as you know, every year, and they bring the principals in, the consultants, to talk about what happened. And Jennifer Palmieri, who was the communications head over on the Hillary campaign, and Kellyanne Conway, who of course was the campaign manager for Trump, got into this debate, and Jen Palmieri basically said, you won because of white racism. My read on that is they believe that. That's their explanation for the election results. Do you think they believe that?
I think they believe it, and I also think it disserves Democrats most.
Of course it does.
Because obviously when you call someone a racist or a sexist, you're basically saying your point of view doesn't matter.
Yes.
You're invalidating every concern they have. And the irony of that is so palpable because the Democratic Party is so sensitive to if the opposite dynamic occurs. If a conservative were to say that about a woman, that you're just being emotional.
Yes.
Well, obviously that's inappropriate. And obviously when someone's upset, you should not listen to the emotion. You should see what triggered that anger. And you don't see
the root causes, we used to call them. Yes.
Exactly. And you don't see the Democratic Party extend the same tolerance and sympathy that they do for almost every other group to the very voters who once were the keystone of the Democratic coalition under Franklin Roosevelt.
Is there anybody, and we're almost out of time, but you follow this so closely, is there anyone on the Democratic side, any smart person who's thinking about this clearly and trying to really understand what just happened to their party?
Well, there's obviously people who are on the outs with the Democratic Party, like Jim Webb,
right. Well,
who
yeah.
clearly was an icon of sort of the Reagan Democrat. And I think how he came to be thrown under the bus with the contemporary Democratic Party really does capture the problem that Democrats have with some of the very voters that they should most speak to if they actually mean what they say about the values of
I agree with that completely.
underclass.
One of the smartest people I've ever interviewed, Jim Webb. Thank you. David, that was great.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it.